huge anthem. It really is, and it just seems to. I mean, it seems to just be able to sort of reach out and just touch a lot of people.
With those sneering opening lines, Jarvis Cocker of Pulp launched into what would become one of the most iconic British anthems of the 1990s. Common People is more than just a catchy Britpop song. It's a story about class and privilege. But how did this little band from Sheffield make a dent in the music landscape already dominated by huge bands like Oasis and Blur? How did this 30-something elder statesman write the defining Britpop anthem? See, today I want to explore the story of Common People, the inspiration, lyrics, the context about how it affected the Britpop movement, how people received it, and most importantly, its enduring legacy. In doing so, it becomes clear why this track remains as resonant today as it did 3 decades ago. Before Common People, Pulp were a cult band with a long, strange journey that spanned over a decade of lineup changes and obscurity. Formed in Sheffield in 1978 by a teenage Jarvis Cocker, the band spent much of the 1980s experimenting with different sounds, ranging from post-punk to synth-pop, without ever breaking into the mainstream. You see, early on, they were signed to Fire Records and released 2 albums, It in 1983 and Freaks in 1987. Both of which failed commercially and went largely unnoticed by the wider music press. But still, Jarvis's lyrical wit and theatrical flair were already developing beneath the surface, and for those who knew him, they knew he was destined to be a star. So it wasn't until the early 1990s that Pulp began to refine their signature sound and their aesthetic that would make them icons of the Britpop era. That came with the release of Separations in 1992, and then the fantastic His and Hers in 1994. They then started gaining serious attention, and the latter album, with songs like Do You Remember the First Time and Babies, saw them finally charting and being taken seriously by critics and the indie crowd alike. These tracks combine catchy melodies with sharp observational lyrics about sex, class, awkward adolescence, and just kind of everyday British life. Jarvis often said he wanted to write about all the weird bits in between sex, the awkwardness and what have you. And these little strange side stories make his lyrics and songs so memorable. By the time Different Class arrived in 1995, Pulp were no longer outsiders. They were leading figures in a cultural movement. But Common People wasn't just a continuation of their success. It was a breakthrough that turned Jarvis Cocker into a reluctant and national icon and gave Pulp mainstream success that they'd spent 15 years chasing. The story behind Common People begins, as expected, at St Martin's College in London. At the age of 25, after being in his band for 10 years at this point, Jarvis Cocker enrolled in a film programme at Central St Martin's College in London. One evening, Jarvis went with his classmates to the pub. In the group was a Greek-born student. She suddenly piped up with this idea that she was going to move to Hackney and live like the common people, Jarvis later recalled. It turned out that she was from quite a well-to-do background, and somehow she thought it would be interesting to go and live in a kind of scummy area, and she found that exotic. I was in my second year of filmmaking, and you had to do another subject, Jarvis explained to Vox in June of 1995. I chose sculpture, and I met this girl who wanted to live in Hackney like common people. She said she wanted to suffer. I was saying, that's impossible. You could rent a shitty flat and go to rough pubs, but you've got a get out clause. Your dad will send you some money. You're not trapped like they are. Anyway, she wouldn't have it. It was one of the things that I found quite strange when I moved to London, he told the Melody Maker in May of 1995. Because when I lived in Sheffield, I was always getting flack off football fans. I was always considered a bit of an idiot. Then suddenly I came down here, and because I spoke with a northern accent, I had this air of slight earthliness. I liked that because I'd never had it before. Common People was written a long time before the rest of the Different Class album, with Jarvis recalling that he'd first conceived the song in June of 1994. The track was performed live for the first time at the Reading Festival on the 27th of August with a set of unfinished lyrics. We forced Ireland to release Common People as a single before the rest of the album was done, Jarvis told Q magazine. I felt, especially after being out of step for so long, if you had a song that was in the right place at the right time, then you'd be an idiot to let that moment pass. I was staying at my sister Saskia's, falling asleep on the settee, and suddenly it came to me. the idea of dealing with my experiences in London and the differences between Sheffield and London. The other 8 songs were done while Common People was in the top 10. That state of excitement, knowing for once in your life you had a mass audience, gave us the confidence, certainly gave me the confidence to bring certain things out of myself. This woman, whose identity has never been confirmed, but Jarvis has claimed that she was the daughter of a millionaire shipping magnate. A persistent rumour, denied by all concerned, has it that Common People is about the leftist artist Denai Stratu, a contemporary of Jarvis's at St Martin's, and who is married to Jacobin contributor Yanis Varoufakis. However, Cocker denied these claims, having said it wasn't her because she had blonde hair and the girl had dark hair. However, Jarvis said later, in 2011 we played at St Martin's and someone showed me a picture on their phone and said, "Is that the girl you wrote the song about?" I went, "Yeah, I think it is." Unfortunately, I didn't ask them for the picture and I can't remember who showed it to me, so it's still a mystery. What does it even mean to live like common people? For someone of privilege, the phrase can only ever really be hypothetical. You can imitate the aesthetics of poverty, but the consequences, the fear and reality of it, can't be recreated. It's not something you can experience like a tourist. And the encounter stuck with Jarvis and evolved into a song that ridicules that naive desire of the privileged to dip into working class life without ever truly facing its struggles, like having a gap year. But by 1995, the UK was emerging from years of political and economic turbulence. You see, the effects of the 1980s and the economic policies of Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government had left deep divides in the country, particularly among the working class, and Common People, and I guess Britpop in general, was a reaction to this climate. The resulting lyrics are dripping with sarcasm, but what elevates the song to a pop masterpiece is how it pairs this social commentary with a driving euphoric melody that gets louder and louder as the song goes on and on. The delivery feels righteous. It makes feeling like being common is exciting and that you, Mr. Richie Rich, aren't invited. By the time the song explodes into its final chorus, it's nothing short of a battle cry.
Sing along with the common people. Sing along and it might just get you.
So, the words.
She came from Greece, she had a thirst for knowledge. She studied sculpture at St Martin's College. That's where I caught her eye.
We're introduced to the woman as someone exotic and intriguing, but Jarvis has said that this is just a woman he wanted to sleep with at college. But almost immediately, the narrator's tone sours as her class becomes apparent.
She told me that her dad was loaded. I said, in that case, I'll have rum and Coca-Cola. She said, fine.
From the get-go, the song mocks her attempt to blend in with the common people.
I wanna live like common people. I wanna do whatever common people do. Wanna sleep with common people.
There's a dark implication here. Not only does the woman want to try on working class life, but she's also turning it into a form of sexual thrill. She wants to sleep with the common people to feel real, but it's nothing more than a temporary measure. She can never be amongst them. Jarvis's narrator is both disgusted and perhaps a little bit turned on, caught between disgust and attraction. Common People then lists all the things that you can buy, wear or do in order to live the life, if that's what you want. Like,
I went to Fletcher Barber shop. Smoke some backs and play some pool. Watching roaches climb the wall.
however, Jarvis makes it quite clear that if you called your dad, he could stop it all.
If you called your dad, he could stop it. Oh yeah.
It's not a true reality for her, and because of that, she will never see the beauty and the hardship of being part of the common people. And this is where the song's emotion really hits. Jarvis doesn't just mock the woman, he states that being poor as a style or adventure underplays and undermines the lives of those who have no choice in the matter. You can live in a council flat, you can eat at the local supermarket, but if your rent is still being paid by your wealthy father, are you really suffering? And it's suffering that makes it all worthwhile. And it's ironic that after the release of this song, Jarvis could never really call himself working class ever again. though it's even debated if he ever truly was anyway. To fully understand the song's impact, we need to place it within its cultural moment. So in the mid-1990s, the UK was undergoing a national identity renaissance through the Britpop movement. Bands like Oasis and Blur, Suede and Pulp were seen as reclaiming Britishness from the popularity that American grunge brought, often referencing distinctly British things like football, housing estates, council flats, and working class life. But while Oasis and Blur often romanticised or stylised working class life, whether it's the Cockney East End or rainy Manchester, Pulp stood out for their sharp observational edge. Jarvis wasn't interested in nostalgia. His lyrics painted vivid scenes of urban drudgery, awkward social encounters, and frustrations of class divide. And Common People was released during the run-up to New Labour's election victory in 1997. It was Pulp's 15th single, and on the back of the single sleeve, a statement read, "There is a war in progress. Don't be a casualty. The time to decide whose side you're on is here. Choose wisely. Stay alive in 95. The song said, no matter how cool it seemed to cosplay as working class, the material conditions still separating the classes are still very much in place. It also came at a time as well when gentrification was beginning to transform British cities. So like bohemianism and art school rebellion of the 80s, I just think of like Morrissey and the Smiths, had become a style to be bought and sold. And suddenly being gritty and dirty and working class was fashionable, and it's kind of what Common People takes aim at, the act of commodifying poverty. Musically, Common People is just as sharp and structured as its lyrics. Its riff was written on a Casio keyboard by Jarvis. It starts with a slow, hypnotic synth motif that builds tension, and then as Jarvis's spoken word storytelling progresses, the drums kick in, followed by a crunchy guitar riff that gradually rises in intensity. By the time the chorus hits, the song is a full-on explosion of sound. This build-up mirrors the emotional arc of the song. It starts almost conversational, just a guy telling a story about a strange encounter, but it transforms into a furious, almost apocalyptic scream by the end. And that's no accident. The production, which was helmed by Chris Thomas, who worked with the Sex Pistols and NXS, gave the track polish and a sense of danger. He amplified the keyboard riff with 48 overlapping audio tracks, including several organs and a violin. The structure also reflects how class anger can simmer underneath the surface before erupting. Jarvis doesn't scream at first. He lets the story move along, he lets it breathe, before launching into that repetitive chorus that channels all his rage about the world and the girl in the song. Upon its release on the 22nd of May 1995, Common People shot up the UK singles chart, eventually reaching number 2. It was kept from the top spot by Robson and Jerome's cover of Unchained Melody, a fact that has become an ironic footnote in British pop culture. Common People has notched 240 million Spotify streams and over 56 million YouTube views. And critically, the song is hailed as a masterpiece. NME, Melody Maker, Q Magazine, When They Were All Important, all listed it among the best songs of the year. It won tons of awards and established Pulp as not just a quirky outsider Britpop band, but one of the major voices in British music. And in 1995, John Squire broke his collarbone in a cycling accident, which left Glastonbury without a headliner. Pulp were asked to do it, and Common People became the anthem of the festival. And I'll just list some more achievements while I'm here. So we've got named the number 1 greatest Britpop song in the Rolling Stone Readers Poll in 2015, placed at number 6 in NME's 500 greatest songs of all time in 2014, voted number 1 greatest Britpop song by BBC Radio Music 6 music listeners in 2014, and it was nominated for the Brit Awards in 1996, British Single of the Year and British Video of the Year, although it didn't win. And it's been covered by William Shatner. Yes, really. Have a listen.
I want to live like common people. I want to do whatever common people do.
That's truly terrible. What makes the song enduring is its complexity. It's funny, but it's still not a joke. And it's angry, but it's not like preachy or ranty. It's asked some comfortable questions. The main one being, can the privileged ever really understand struggle? Decades later, the themes of Common People feel more relevant than ever. In an era of influencers and brands co-opting working class aesthetics for clout, like high-end brands selling £800 things like trucker hats and beating up trainers. A world where politicians pose in hard hats while still cutting social programs, and gap years of rich kids slumming it. Can't go into that one too much, as I slummed it traveling for a little bit. But most importantly, Common People is still a great pop song, and that's why we still talk about it. Lyrics and meaning are one thing, but at the end of the day, you can dance to it and you can sing along with it, and it works in an indie disco or a festival, and that's why it's timeless. Jarvis Cocker once said, "The only thing you can write about truthfully is what you know." And maybe that is true, but with Common People, he pushed that idea to its limits. Sure, he might have been singing it from the pyramid stage in front of 100,000 people, but that doesn't make the message any less real. If anything, it proves he understood something that others only pretend to, that the gritty, frustrating, unglamorous reality of working class life. He captured it not to mock it, but to expose the performative way some people try to experience it. And look, I'm not slagging you off here, Jarvis. That's what exactly makes the song so good. It's a banger because it tells that truth for so many people. And that's why the song endures. It's a time capsule of the 1990s, and it's a timeless mirror. You can admire the lifestyle all you want, but unless it's your only option, you'll never really know what it means to live like the common people. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I saw Pulp at Glastonbury this year as the mysterious Patchwork, and they completely blew it away. One of the best acts of the week. And when I got home, I had to do this video on them and their most iconic song. So thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.